It took me 37 years to realize what I'm about to tell you today. Here's what I learned at 37. I finally learned that I mattered and that I get to decide what matters in life. And you've probably had a few of these aha moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I need to focus on myself because I matter the most. And then maybe you've had some aha moments where you're like, oh yeah, you know what? I get to decide what's important here. I get to decide what matters. So I'm going to tell you two stories. One, back when I was 37, because I'm 46 now, the aha moment realizing, oh my gosh, we only get this one life and I actually matter. And then I'll tell you a recent story about a high school graduation. Because if you don't know me, my name's Miss Alissa Shirk, and I'm a lifelong educator, speaker, and coach. Learn more at alissashirk.com. And I encourage you to tune in because no matter where you're at in life, the real work is coming back to yourself again and again and again and reminding yourself, I matter, and reminding yourself that you get to decide what matters in your life. So if you're interested in learning to trust yourself, trust your intuition, and stay true to yourself, tune in. So flashback to 2017. If you'd like to take a moment and think about where you were at back in 2017 and what were you doing back then? Pre-COVID 2017. Sometimes it helps to open your pictures on your phone or look at your resume and simply remind yourself what the heck you were doing back in the day. So back in 2017, I was realizing that I mattered. And first of all, let's just think about your childhood, okay? In childhood, whether or not our parents tell us or they just show us what matters, we pick up on what matters. We're like little sponges. Our parents don't need to explicitly tell us, money is important or looks are important. Whatever was important to your parents, you probably knew, even if they didn't train you on it. For example, in my house, being seen and not heard was pretty important. Staying quiet, having a serene household was important in my family. And even though my sister and I never really got any communication that grades were important, we were still overachievers. So in my family, grades were not really ever discussed. They were not important. Nobody was keeping tabs on the grades. This is way before all schools had those online portals where you can check grades. This was just back in the day, no one cared about grades. But when you're a kid, you kind of pick up on what your parents think matters. Some parents are really focused on saving for retirement. Some parents are focused on adventure. However you were raised, we're raised to think that certain things matter. And in some households, kids really don't matter that much. So sometimes we grow up with a low self-worth and we focus on pleasing others because we really don't think that we matter that much. So personally, when I was a kid, what really mattered to me was whatever my parents cared about. And that's probably how a lot of you grew up. And then the reason I'm a lifelong educator is because school opened my eyes. Once I got to school, the teachers were focused on me as a student, as a person, and I felt like what I did mattered. When I did well in a class, I got this A, and sometimes I got a gold star, sometimes I got a compliment, and I felt like the achievements mattered. I had teachers that suggested I try out for cheer and take AP calculus and all sorts of things that I didn't even know existed. I didn't even know they mattered. And all of a sudden, There were new things to explore that mattered way more than whatever my parents were concerned about at the time. I had my own concerns. I had my new set of independent concerns. And for me, school gave me a sense of independence and it gave me a sense of who I was. And I carried that through into college at Penn State and into so many different study abroad programs that I got scholarships for, and I was a first generation college student. And for me, I felt like education helped me be successful and helped make my life matter. I'm telling you this because I'm going to ask you to recall a time where you felt very strong and optimistic. And for me, I would say anytime I was in school, high school, college, that gave me a sense of strength and optimism. And sometimes when we hit hard times, it helps us to call back our power and recall times in the past where we felt strong and optimistic. So even though I found so much success in school, by the time 2017 hit, I was 37 and I still hadn't completely realized that I mattered. Even though I had had success in school and in career, by the time 2017 hit, by the time I was 37 years old, I still hadn't truly realized that I mattered and I get to decide what matters in life. At 37, I was a divorced single mom. I was in the middle of a divorce. I had left my husband when my kids were 1 and 4, very young. And I had been working that entire time. So at 37, I was actually like a receptionist at the clinic, at like the community health clinic. And I already had a master's degree. I had worked at colleges and universities overseas and in Oregon and Pennsylvania. And I was massively overqualified for this desk job, but I lived and I still live in a very small town in Colorado. So here I am. I'm sitting at this desk job in 2017, overqualified and wondering what has life come to? And up until that point, much of how I coped with life, with the divorce, with parenthood and being a single parent was I coped with humor. I made it seem like nothing was a big deal. And you might do this too. You might shrug it off. Like, oh, I have this dead end job, but it's no big deal. It's hilarious. Or, yeah, I messed up, married the wrong person, got a divorce, and it's a dumpster fire, LOL. And it's not LOL. So if you feel like you shrug things off, tune in because I feel like this is time for a serious era for some of us. It's time for some of us to realize that we matter. So 2017, what I ended up doing was I did something that seemed crazy. I quit my desk job with the salary and benefits, and I went to work for the school district because I had been working in the school district before I got divorced. I had enjoyed it and I wanted to go back. Even though the entry-level job I got didn't pay as much as the health clinic, I knew that's where I wanted to be. I knew that I enjoyed working in education and I wanted summers off with my children. I had a million reasons to quit that desk job. And even though it seemed a little nuts, I had to go. And so I ended up leaving the health clinic, the stable 9 to 5 salaried position, and going back to the school district. And that was way back in 2017. Eventually, I became a licensed teacher in 2019, and now I'm a licensed school administrator. And I work in special education right now. And I coach adults as a life coach. So I've had a really long career in education as a special education teacher, as a behavior coach, as a social emotional coach, trauma-informed teacher, all of these things. And it's all because I finally realized what mattered to me and I went after it. And I didn't settle into a desk job that I was going to regret. And I don't want you to settle into a life that you regret just because it's no big deal. because your life is a big deal. You are a big deal. Your health is a big deal. Your career, your relationships, everything. So it's funny because this time of year, everyone's graduating high school or even graduating preschool or college. There's all these graduation parties, and everyone's heading into the next chapter of their life. A few years ago, our guidance counselor at the high school that I've worked at for years now, our guidance counselor, Mark Thompson, was retiring. He was the guest speaker at our graduation, and his graduation speech was, "You matter." And like I said, I live in a small town in Colorado, South Colorado, very conservative. Lots of Texans come here and lots of retirees live here and go to church here. And the guidance counselor who was retiring, Mark Thompson, was very well loved. He was very well respected in the community. And everyone was tuning in. When he was talking at graduation, everyone was all ears. And his story was like a little bit crazy. It was totally up my alley because it was about a psychic woman in like an African village. And I'll tell you the story in a second. So it's totally up my alley. And so Mark starts telling the parents, the grandparents, aunts and uncles, everybody sitting at graduation. He starts telling them this story about how he realized that he mattered and his health mattered. So imagine we're all sitting on the football field in our graduation gowns, and I have a master's degree, so I have a sash and a gown, and all the graduates have their gowns on and their caps, and they're getting ready to turn their tassel once everyone announces that they're graduates. And we're all sitting there very formal. All the families are behind us. And Mark, the soon-to-be retired guidance counselor, gets up to the mic. And he starts telling this story about how he and his wife, they do missions trips with their church. And they were about to go, I feel like it was Africa. They were about to go somewhere in Africa. Maybe it was South Africa. They were about to go on a missions trip to a small little town in the jungle. And he said to his wife, he said, "Something's not right with my lungs. Like my lungs, I can't breathe that well. Something is going on, right?" But he had just gotten so used to putting it off. You know, there was the missions trip to do, and there's always something to do. And he hadn't really looked into this lung issue that he kept having. So he gets to the town, the little village, and the tribe has the town psychic, like the tribe psychic. She's the medicine woman. She's the seer. She can see the future. She can diagnose people and figure out what's wrong with people and help people in the village. So they get to the village. They've been there a few days. And one morning, Mark wakes up and he goes out to the kitchen to have some coffee. And the village psychic, the medicine woman, says to him, "I had a dream last night. Can I tell you about it?" And he said, "Sure, you can tell me about it." And she said, "I had a dream that the angel of death came to see you and you were already gone." And I'm getting chills just telling you this story. So I'm sitting on the football field at our high school and my jaw is dropping. I'm like, what is this story he's telling everybody? This is like amazing, right? I'm loving it. And I don't know what everyone else in the audience is thinking right now, because this is not the typical graduation story. Shoot for the moon, land among the stars, like all of those sayings, like this is totally different. But he went on to say that as soon as they landed back in the States, he went to the doctor. And as soon as he went to the doctor, he was scheduled for heart surgery, for open heart surgery. And I feel like I can tell you this story because he told basically everybody at graduation. So it's not like a confidential story or anything. I have it on video because it was so captivating at graduation day. So as soon as he goes to the doctor, he's scheduled for open heart surgery. And like They did a massive surgery on him and saved his life. I think like the fluid buildup, the lung congestion is a common symptom of like heart problems. And so his graduation speech message was, you matter. Don't put off that appointment. Don't put off that breakup that you have to go through. I coach people on this all the time. People who think that they've invested 2 years in a relationship and they're in their 30s and it's too late to break up. And I tell them, listen, I was married for 10 years. I had 2 children. And I still got a divorce. I still went through with it. So sometimes we think like we're too far gone into the addiction. We're too far gone into the marriage, whatever it is, right? And we think like, can we really turn things around? Does it really matter? Yes, it does. Ask anyone who's overcome addiction. It matters. Their life matters so much now, and they're so happy. Ask anyone who got out of a bad marriage. Does their life matter? Yes. And their life is like more peaceful and more beautiful now more than ever. Ask somebody, was it worth going to college or law school for those 4 years? It seems like it's going to be such a long haul for an additional 4 years of schooling for something. But if it really matters to you, if you're very passionate about it, you can do it. 4 years can go by in the blink of an eye. So what I wanted to convey in this episode is that you matter, and what you decide to do matters in life, and you get to choose. You get to choose what's important. For me, back in 2017, I finally realized like my life is important. My schedule with my kids is important. My career is important. I'm not going to sit at a receptionist desk for the rest of my life. I'm like a passionate educator with a master's degree. And so I went back into education. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was important. And another thing that I learned during my divorce was speaking up for yourself matters. You cannot just shrug it off and sign it off and go with somebody else's plan for your life. You have to write down your own ideas and write down your own plan and write down how you want things to go. Because when you write it down, it's 42% more likely to happen. You're 42% more likely to do the things that you write down. So even if you're just daydreaming and it feels like a delusional daydream, get a pen and write down how you want your romantic relationship to go, how you want your house hunt to go. If you're looking for a house, right? Write down how you want your vacation to go. Write down how you want your kids' teen years to go. Set an intention and be mindful about where you're headed, because you decide what's important and you decide what matters. I have stories for days about this, and I thought it would be fun to share Mark's story about the graduation speech. I thought that was really nice. I guess one more story I'll share is when I was getting a divorce, I had maybe enough from my settlement to almost buy a trailer home. And so I was looking at trailer homes with my realtor at the time. And I was looking at trailer homes, and I was like, you know what? Where I live is important to me, and like this location, it's just not going to work. This location, this situation, it's not going to bring joy to me. I'm going to be sad and unhappy. I'm just going to stay in my rental. Where I live matters. I can't live here in the trailer park. That's just how I was feeling. Nothing against people who live in trailers. I grew up on a street full of trailers in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I really was open to the idea, and I asked to look at them. But when I was looking, I was like, you know what, where I live matters. So I decided again, what matters. We have to decide like on a daily basis, really, right? What's important, and make all these decisions. And so the real work is coming back to ourselves again and again and again, and coming back to what matters to us. Because it's easy to get on autopilot and doubt ourselves, but write down what you want again and again. Write a plan. Go to plancoachingmethod.com. I have lots of advice about how to journal your plan. But write down what matters and stay true to yourself. In my case, I knew I didn't want to live in the Vista trailers. And so what I did was, okay, I told my realtor that's not for me. So then she suggested that I buy this lot out on a road and flip it because it was underpriced, she said. So I bought this lot for like $15,000. And then I sold it for like 23 and I thought I was a baller. I thought I was like some mogul, right? Sold that lot, okay? And then I went and I bought my dream lot on Inspiration Drive. I was feeling like a mogul. I was feeling like a baller. And I was like hustling real estate all of a sudden, flipping lots and buying my dream lot. And so that's where I ended up, just with a lot. I knew I couldn't afford to build a house on there. There was no way I could afford to build a house. However, shortly after I started my job with the school district in 2017, I was hired as a full-time teacher in 2018. So it was like a year later that I went from just being a teaching assistant to a full-time trauma-informed special education teacher at the elementary school back in 2018. I worked there for 5 years and then now I work at the high school. So I bought that lot just with a little faith that eventually I would be able to build my dream house on it. And I had some doubt. Did I ever? I thought, oh my gosh, it's 2017. I totally missed the boat on getting a good deal because the good deals on houses were back in 2011 and prices had done nothing but go up in Colorado. So I was telling myself, like, okay, you bought a lot, but you might have to flip this one too. You might have to sell it because all the prices have done nothing but go up. And are you going to be able to build? Can you even afford it? I did not know, but I bought it. And then once I got that full-time teaching job, I could get a mortgage. And I got a builder, Ron Christensen. He's retired now, but he was like an angel sent from heaven. He was like my little guardian angel. He just like flew in and literally broke ground on my house in April. April, May, June. I closed on my mortgage in June. The house was done. He just needed my house to keep his team busy before they were ready to start on some big mansion. So really my little house that he built for me, it just kept his workers busy and it gave them something to do while they were like in between jobs, in between like the big jobs. And so I'm telling you to stay true to yourself and your dreams matter. And when you take one little step toward your dreams, they take 10 steps toward you. I'm like getting emotional talking about this. I took one little step toward my dreams. I bought a lot on Inspiration Drive. First I bought some lot I don't even remember the name of, flipped it, made some money, and then bought my lot. I kept taking little steps toward this vision I had. And back then, in 2017, 2018, my vision was just like, be a teacher, be a great mom, and build a house. That was my vision. And guess what? It is 2026, and I have surpassed that vision. Not only did I get my teaching license, I got my administrator's license. I got my trauma-informed coaching certificate, and I'm a life coach for adults. I don't even do behavior coaching for kids anymore. I teach high school level students, and I coach adults. And I'm so glad I'm not at that receptionist desk anymore. I'm going to Florida for most of the month of July with my kids, and I'm a teacher with summers off. So that's just a little bit of my story, and I encourage you to write out how you want your story to go. Even if you're just writing out how you want your next date to go, or how you want your summer to go, or how you want your career to ultimately go. Whatever it is, I encourage you to write down a plan. That's how I coach people. The plan coaching method. Write down your preferences, one thing to let go of, one action to take, and one way that you are going to nurture yourself. So you could focus on that. And any sort of journaling, I think, is a great way to come back to the fact that you matter and to come back to the fact that you decide what's important. You write it down. You write down what matters. You stay true to yourself, you trust yourself, and you don't just go through life on autopilot. Because not all of us will be lucky enough to have a town psychic come knocking at our door and talk to us over coffee about what we need to improve. When you start thinking about what matters to you and acting on what matters, I guarantee your life will be way better than you ever imagined a year from now. We might not get every single thing on our vision board 365 days after we write our vision board. We might not get everything we write down in our journal, but your life will vastly improve just by focusing on what matters and reminding yourself that you are numero uno, you matter most. So thank you for being here. Subscribe to the podcast, follow on YouTube, wherever you're watching. Thank you for watching. And if you go to alissashirk.com, you can join my free newsletter and you can check out what I'm up to. Thank you for being here. Catch you next time.